He was the most complete fighter the sport had ever seen. Fast, flawless, and untouchable. Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson didn't just win. He made elite fighters look like amateurs. He defended his UFC title 11 times, broke records, and created moments that looked impossible. But somehow, the crowd never roared. The promotion never pushed, and eventually, the UFC let him go. While louder, flashier fighters became stars, the quiet master was ignored. Why? What happens when the greatest technician in MMA history gets forgotten in real time? This is the story of a man who built a kingdom out of footwork, angles, and absolute precision, only to be left behind by the empire he helped build. This is Demetrious Johnson, the perfect fighter in the wrong era. Before he was the most technical fighter in MMA history, before the suplex submissions and flawless game plans, Demetrious Johnson was just a quiet kid from a noisy world. Born on August 13, 1986, in Madisonville, Kentucky, and raised in Parkland, Washington, DJ didn't grow up with privilege. He didn't grow up with security, and he definitely didn't grow up with odds in his favor. His childhood was marked by hardship, not just financial, but emotional. He never met his biological father. His stepfather was abusive. His mother, Karen, was deaf but fiercely protective, a woman who fought hard to raise her children in a world that rarely gave them anything. There were days when Johnson went to school hungry, nights when silence didn't mean peace, it meant distance. The kind of upbringing that doesn't harden you, it sharpens you. He was small, always, at every stage of life. Kids laughed, coaches hesitated, even teachers questioned his toughness. But DJ didn't complain. He didn't retaliate. He just worked. Quietly, obsessively. He discovered early on that he couldn't outsize anyone, so he would outpace them, outthink them, outlast them. In high school, he ran track and wrestled, both perfect for his body type, lean, light, fast. As a wrestler, he didn't just survive against bigger opponents. He beat them with timing, with speed, with angles. And every time someone overlooked him, it only fueled the obsession deeper. He didn't start training in MMA until his early 20s. A little late, but it didn't matter. Because when he found mixed martial arts, it was like a puzzle finally solved. He was a natural. Every movement, every technique, every detail, it all made sense to him. While others sparred to prove something, DJ sparred to learn. He began fighting locally, regional shows in Washington, working full-time construction jobs by day and training by night. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't strategic, it was survival. He fought anyone, anytime, at any weight. No sponsors, no buzz, just grit. And even in those early days, his style was different. He moved like no one else, not just quick, but efficient. He threw combinations, shot takedowns mid-exchange, used angles that confused opponents. He wasn't overpowering, but he didn't need to be. He simply outclassed. Still, no scouts called, no promotions courted him, because at the time, the MMA world wasn't looking for small, respectful, calculated fighters. It was looking for knockouts, muscles, blood, and bark. And Johnson? He didn't knock people out. He didn't trash talk. He didn't play the game. He just won. And eventually, those wins became impossible to ignore. When Demetrious Johnson broke into the big leagues, the UFC didn't even have a division for his weight class. There was no flyweight title, no spotlight for men under 135 pounds. If you were fast and light, you had two options: move up or stay invisible. Johnson moved up. He made his WEC debut at bantamweight, 135 pounds, against larger, longer, stronger fighters. On paper, he was always at a disadvantage. In the cage? Not so much. He danced around opponents like a ghost. In and out. Land, escape, re-enter. His cardio seemed endless. His tempo, machine-like. He wasn't just active, he was accurate. And even when he lost, he never looked outclassed. He gave Dominic Cruz, the reigning bantamweight king at the time, a war. The footwork battle alone looked like two fighters moving at triple speed, while the rest of the world stood still. But the Cruz fight exposed something else. Johnson's ceiling at bantamweight. He could compete, but winning a belt at that weight? Not likely. He wasn't just smaller. He was giving up power, reach, and strength against every opponent. And yet, he never complained. He just kept working. And then, the UFC finally pulled the trigger. In 2012, they announced the creation of the flyweight division, 125 pounds. The announcement didn't make headlines. There was no fanfare, but for fighters like Johnson, it was everything. a chance to fight where he belonged, a chance to chase a title without giving up 10 pounds to everyone, a chance to finally showcase his full potential. The UFC launched a 4-man tournament to crown its inaugural flyweight champion. The names were elite: Joseph Benavidez, Yasuhiro Urushitani, Ian McCall, and Johnson. It was a brutal bracket. Speed versus speed. Technique versus technique. Johnson's first fight against McCall ended in a controversial draw. Judges miscalculated scores. Fans were divided. The rematch was booked. This time, DJ dominated. He outpaced McCall, frustrated him with movement, landed combinations that left no doubt. He looked like a man solving a riddle in real time. Each round, he downloaded new data and shut McCall down. That win put him in the tournament final against Joseph Benavidez, a powerhouse striker with knockout power and wrestling. Most fans expected a close fight. Instead, they got the beginning of an era. Johnson used movement, angles, and perfectly timed takedowns to neutralize Benavidez. When the fight went to decision, DJ was crowned the first ever UFC Flyweight Champion. And just like that, history was made. But outside the cage, silence. No media blitz. No ESPN features. No headline push. It was almost like the UFC didn't know what to do with him. He had the belt, he had the skills, but not the image, not the noise. And while DJ was building a legacy inside the octagon, he was being quietly ignored outside of it. If Demetrious Johnson thought becoming champion would finally earn him recognition, he was wrong. Because while he was polishing his belt, the UFC was polishing other stars. John Jones, Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, fighters with flash, controversy, drama, fighters who sold. And Johnson, he was just perfect. That's the problem. Perfection in MMA doesn't go viral. It doesn't sell t-shirts. It doesn't explode on Twitter. But DJ didn't care. While others cut promos, he cut angles. While others chased call-outs, he chased growth. And he got better. Much better. Between 2012 and 2018, Johnson defended his flyweight title 11 times, the most consecutive title defenses in UFC history at the time. And the list of challengers wasn't soft. John Dodson, a speed demon with knockout power. Kyoji Horiguchi, a future world champion. Joseph Benavidez, rematched and beaten again. Ray Borg, submitted in mid-air during a suplex-to-armbar. Henry Cejudo, Olympic gold medalist in wrestling. Each opponent brought a different threat, and each time, DJ found the solution. He didn't just win, he dismantled. He made fighters look confused, amateur, powerless. He'd set traps, change levels, and make adjustments between rounds that looked like a coach had hacked the simulation. His fight IQ was freakish. He could see things before they happened. Every feint had a purpose. Every step was data collection. He didn't need damage to dominate. He just needed movement. And for purists, for those who understood the game, he was a marvel. But for the mainstream? Still, no buzz. Dana White placed him on undercards beneath less decorated fighters. He wasn't booked for media tours. Title defenses were promoted like regional bouts. And the fans? They didn't show up. Why? Because DJ wasn't angry, wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic. He respected his opponents. He didn't brawl. He didn't curse. He just worked like a technician in a lab. And the tragedy of his reign is this. He was building an entire division from scratch, giving it legitimacy, turning flyweights into main eventers, and no one watched. He was undefeated for 6 years, a record breaker, a generational talent. But in the eyes of the UFC machine, he was expendable. And that reality would catch up with him soon. Most fighters win with a weapon. Power, speed, pressure, jiu-jitsu. But Demetrious Johnson didn't fight with a weapon. He fought like a system. Every movement, every transition, every feint was connected. He wasn't improvising. He was orchestrating. While his opponents swung with emotion, DJ moved with precision. He wasn't reacting to what they did. He was 2 steps ahead, forcing them into traps they didn't know they were walking into. He wasn't the biggest flyweight, or the strongest, or even the fastest, but he was the most complete. In MMA, we talk about mixed martial arts, but rarely do we see someone who has actually mastered the mix. DJ did. He could strike with elite kickboxers. He could out-wrestle Olympians. He could flow from stand-up to ground to submission without hesitation or wasted motion. Against Kyoji Horiguchi, He didn't just dominate, he submitted him with 1 second left in the fight, the latest finish in UFC history. It wasn't desperation, it was calculation. He planned it, he saw the opportunity, and he waited for it. Against Ray Borg, he pulled off one of the most absurd finishes in MMA history, a suplex-to-armbar transition in mid-air. It looked like something out of a video game. The ref stopped the fight, the crowd gasped. And DJ? He smiled, like it was routine. His striking was clean. His clinch work was suffocating. His transitions were invisible. His cardio? Limitless. While most fighters slow in round 3, DJ looked like he was just warming up in round 5. He didn't take damage. He didn't make mistakes. He didn't get tired. And in 11 title defenses, he was never knocked down, never rocked, never dominated. But all that perfection came at a price. Because fans didn't see knockouts. They didn't see blood. They didn't hear trash talk or call-outs or fake beef. They saw a man who made it look too easy. And when greatness looks easy, people stop appreciating it. The UFC noticed. His pay-per-view numbers were low. His name didn't sell tickets. They began promoting other fighters ahead of him, even when they didn't have a belt. Demetrious Johnson had become the UFC's most dominant champion, and somehow, also its most ignored. And still, DJ stayed professional. He never lashed out, never quit. He kept training, kept evolving, kept perfecting, until the silence got too loud to ignore. By 2017, Demetrious Johnson had broken Anderson Silva's title defense record. He was riding a 13-fight win streak, clearing out the flyweight division one contender at a time. In the eyes of hardcore fans and analysts, he was cementing himself as one of the greatest fighters of all time. But inside the UFC machine, his value was quietly eroding. He wasn't headlining massive cards. He wasn't selling pay-per-views. He wasn't doing stadium tours or reality shows. To the UFC, he wasn't just dominant. He was difficult to market, too quiet, too humble, too technical. So they stopped pretending. While McGregor and Rousey and Jones were on posters, DJ was on the undercard. While he defended his title against monsters like Henry Cejudo, the UFC treated it like background noise. He was the most dominant man in the sport, and yet he felt like an afterthought, and DJ noticed. He called the UFC out publicly, though respectfully, asking for better treatment. He wanted a share of the spotlight, not for ego, for legacy, for fairness. He had delivered again and again, but the promotion didn't deliver back. When the UFC approached him about facing TJ Dillashaw, a champion from another weight class, DJ agreed, under one condition: fair compensation. He knew the risk, he knew the reward, but he wasn't willing to fight for legacy exposure and walk away with peanuts. The negotiations fell apart. Dana White, publicly, called Johnson's stance frustrating, said he was holding up great fights, downplayed his draw power. Even as DJ was setting records, he was being positioned as an obstacle, not an asset. And then came the final blow. At UFC 227, Johnson fought Henry Cejudo again, a rematch of a dominant first win. This time, it was razor close. DJ looked sharp early, but Cejudo adapted, clinched, controlled, squeaked out a split decision win. After 6 years, 11 defenses, and total domination, Demetrious Johnson had lost his belt. The UFC didn't set up a trilogy, didn't promote the loss like an epic upset. There was no outcry, no press tour, no thank you from the organization. There was just silence. And then, within months, DJ was gone. By 2017, Demetrious Johnson had broken Anderson Silva's title defense record. He was riding a 13-fight win streak, clearing out the flyweight division one contender at a time. In the eyes of hardcore fans and analysts, he was cementing himself as one of the greatest fighters of all time. But inside the UFC machine, his value was quietly eroding. He wasn't headlining massive cards. He wasn't selling pay-per-views. He wasn't doing stadium tours or reality shows. To the UFC, he wasn't just dominant. He was difficult to market, too quiet, too humble, too technical. So they stopped pretending. While McGregor and Rousey and Jones were on posters, DJ was on the undercard. While he defended his title against monsters like Henry Cejudo, the UFC treated it like background noise. He was the most dominant man in the sport, and yet he felt like an afterthought. And DJ noticed. He called the UFC out publicly, though respectfully, asking for better treatment. He wanted a share of the spotlight, not for ego, for legacy, for fairness. He had delivered again and again. But the promotion didn't deliver back. When the UFC approached him about facing TJ Dillashaw, a champion from another weight class, DJ agreed, under one condition: fair compensation. He knew the risk, he knew the reward, but he wasn't willing to fight for legacy exposure and walk away with peanuts. The negotiations fell apart. Dana White, publicly, called Johnson's stance frustrating, said he was holding up great fights, downplayed his draw power. Even as DJ was setting records, he was being positioned as an obstacle, not an asset. And then came the final blow. At UFC 227, Johnson fought Henry Cejudo again, a rematch of a dominant first win. This time, it was razor close. DJ looked sharp early, but Cejudo adapted, clinched, controlled, squeaked out a split decision win. After 6 years, 11 defenses, and total domination, Demetrious Johnson had lost his belt. The UFC didn't set up a trilogy, didn't promote the loss like an epic upset. There was no outcry, no press tour, no thank you from the organization. There was just silence. And then, within months, DJ was gone. Demetrious Johnson had won titles, defended belts, set records, and walked away from the biggest promotion in the world without bitterness. In Asia, under the lights of one championship, he wasn't chasing respect anymore. He was reclaiming identity. But the sport doesn't care about legacy. It doesn't care about grace, or humility, or status. The sport cares about the next man across from you. And in 2021, that man was Adriano Moraes, a Brazilian phenom, 6 feet tall with deadly submissions and power in both hands. He was the reigning Flyweight Champion, and unlike most of DJ's past opponents, Moraes had size, reach, length, patience. The build-up wasn't hostile. There was no trash talk, just 2 elite martial artists with everything to lose. But for Johnson, there was a complication. Different rules. In one championship, knees to the head of a grounded opponent are legal. DJ knew it. Everyone knew it. But that knowledge didn't make what happened any easier. The fight began with respect, both men cautious, reading, adjusting. Moraes circled, DJ pressed forward. Then it happened. In the second round, Moraes landed a clean uppercut, dropping Johnson. As DJ rolled to recover, still grounded, Moraes stepped in and drove a perfect knee to his face. Johnson collapsed, out cold. For the first time in his career, Demetrious Johnson had been knocked out. The MMA world was stunned. The king of footwork, angles, and avoidance had finally been caught. Not by a fluke, not by a bad decision, but by a clean, brutal finish. For many, it was the moment they'd predicted for years. The downfall. The told you so for critics who said he never fought true killers. But for DJ, it was just another problem to solve. There was no meltdown, no excuses, no public crisis. DJ did what he always did. Analyzed, learned, and adjusted. He went to Thailand, trained at Tiger Muay Thai, focused on clinch work, knees, timing, trained with killers, rebuilt not just his skill set, but his mentality. And in 2022, the rematch was set. Same opponent, same rules, same danger. This time, Johnson flipped the script. He stalked Moraes, cut angles, avoided range. Then, in the 4th round, as Moraes circled backward, DJ leapt forward with a flying knee of his own, landing flush. Moraes dropped, Johnson swarmed, and just like that, Demetrious Johnson had reclaimed the throne. Not with a decision, not with speed, but with violence. It wasn't just a win, it was a message. You knocked me out with a knee. I learned. Now here's yours. The martial artist had become a warrior again, and the world, even the quietest corners of it, had no choice but to pay attention. After regaining the Flyweight Championship, Demetrious Johnson didn't boast. He didn't demand rematches, trash talk opponents, or chase dollar fights. He did something almost unheard of in modern MMA. He went back to living. Johnson never built his identity around belts. He never needed the camera. He had already accomplished what most fighters only dream of, and yet he remained grounded. While others aged into caricatures of their former selves, DJ sharpened into something else. A mentor, a student, a creator. Outside the cage, he began producing high-level content on YouTube, breaking down fights, explaining techniques, playing games, engaging fans, not shouting, not selling, just teaching, just being real. Inside the gym, he stayed evolving. Even in his mid-30s, Johnson sought out better camps, training in Thailand, rolling with elite grapplers, studying the tiny details. He never let legacy slow him down. He kept asking the question that built him from day one: how do I get better? That mindset is what separated him, not just from other champions, but from the sport itself. Because where most fighters get addicted to attention, Johnson stayed addicted to perfection. He wasn't the biggest draw, he wasn't the loudest voice, but fighters, they noticed. Coaches, they studied. Even Dana White, years after letting him walk, admitted DJ might be the most skilled fighter to ever set foot in the octagon. And still, DJ didn't campaign for his name. He let the work speak. That's the thing about Demetrious Johnson. He never chased the spotlight, because the spotlight was never the goal. The goal was mastery. While others yelled about being the GOAT, DJ just kept showing up, kept grinding, kept learning, not because he needed a place in the rankings, but because that's who he was. He was the fighter you couldn't market, because he wasn't performing. He was just perfecting. In a sport built on chaos, Demetrious Johnson was precision. In a business built on promotion, he was quiet excellence. And in an industry obsessed with drama, he was discipline incarnate. Years from now, fans will still debate who the greatest was. Silva, GSP, Jones, Khabib, but ask the ones who fought, who coached, who understood the game, and they'll say the same thing. There was no one like DJ. He broke the rules of what a fighter was supposed to be. He wasn't supposed to headline, wasn't supposed to carry a division, wasn't supposed to knock out giants or outgrapple a not at flyweight. But he didn't listen to that. He just kept winning. His career wasn't filled with scandals or suspensions or meltdowns, no controversies, no padded records, just a decade of elite, undeniable technical dominance. And maybe that's why he was forgotten in real time. Because in MMA, we don't know how to process quiet greatness. We chase sound bites, not substance. We love knockouts, not nuance. But what DJ gave us wasn't just greatness. It was a new standard. He didn't fight to be famous. He fought to be flawless. And when the lights dimmed and the noise faded, he didn't ask for more. He walked away, not because he had nothing left to prove, but because he had finally proven it. In the end, Demetrious Johnson didn't need to be the biggest star, or the loudest name, or the richest man in the room. He just needed to be better. And that's what he was. The greatest fighter most fans never watched. But the one real fighters never stopped studying. They chased fame. He chased mastery. And in that chase, Demetrious Johnson became something more than a champion. He became a blueprint.